Sachin Tendulkar is likely to play his 200th test on home soil. India will play a test series against West Indies in India ahead of the South Africa series. Now, Sachin has currently played 198 tests, and it was expected that he would bring up his historic milestone in test series in South Africa. But now the BCCI is trying to get West Indies for a short tour of India ahead of the South Africa series, and that would mean Sachin Tendulkar could play his 200th test at home in front of his adoring fans. Alright, so the 200th test, which was expected to come up during the South Africa series, is now perhaps going to take place in India, as India will play a test series against West Indies ahead of the November series in South Africa. And with that, Sachin Tendulkar is now likely to play his 200th test on home soil. India will play a test series against West Indies in India ahead of the South Africa series. Sachin has already currently played 198 tests, and earlier it was expected that this historic milestone will be played in South Africa. But now it turns out that the adoring fans of Sachin Tendulkar will get to see him play his 200th test in India. Alright, GS Vivek, Associate Editor of India Today, is joining us for his perspective on this. Vivek, do you think that apart from the adoring fans, the fact that he'll be playing this milestone in India will also put that added pressure on him?
Yeah, I guess in a way it will put a lot of pressure on Sachin, and also the fact that despite the fact that he's played for so long, for 24 years, and also going to play his 200 test matches, it's always a burden of expectations. The fact that he's playing a milestone, people will be watching to see him get back amongst runs, and there's for a period of time now there is a little bit of whispering going on whether he should be continuing or not. There's been a question mark of whether he's dragging his career a bit too much, and people have differed over it. Some people think that yes, he has, and some people think no, he hasn't. So I'm not exactly sure about if this is going to be a compromise deal where they ask Sachin to play 200 test matches, his 200 test match in India, where he won't be challenged as such by the conditions, maybe by the opposition. West Indies is not known to be one of the powerhouses in test cricket as well. So I don't think if Sachin ideally would have liked it that way, he would have, given the fact that he's always played his cricket with great pride and commitment to the country, and always tried to get the best out of him. I'm not exactly sure if anybody would appreciate, or probably he would appreciate, if BCCI is trying to make sure that they give him enough padding to be playing his 200 test match against a weaker opponent and in home conditions. I would ideally, the way if Sachin scores or doesn't score, I think Sachin, if I would have been Sachin Tendulkar, I would have been happy playing my 200 test match in South Africa against the best team in the world currently and against the best fast bowlers, so that when he goes out in test cricket, if he decides to, he will go out with his head scoring high. For me, 100 against West Indies may not be the fitting thing for Sachin's 200 test match, rather than even probably getting a half century against the best attack in the world.
Well, clearly Sachin wants challenges, and the big challenge would have, of course, been playing against South Africa for the 200 test. Let me get in our correspondent Rasesh Mandani now at this point. Rasesh, also the fact that Sachin Tendulkar is coming back from a bit of injury, does that make it a little easy for him if he'll be playing his 200 tests against the West Indies in that case?
Well, Sachin hasn't played active cricket for a period of time, so in that sense, whether it was West Indies or it would have been South Africa, certainly the Champions League will help him to a degree. He's going to participate for Mumbai Indians, of course, so that will help him to get into the groove of things. But like you've seen with the case with the likes of someone like VVS Lakshman, Rahul Dravid in the past, someone who does not play active cricket in all forms of the game is always going to be a challenge to do well, specifically in a certain format. So yes, getting back into the groove in Test match cricket will be a challenge for him, but you can't argue cricketing logic too much for a man who's got the sort of record that Tendulkar has. If this tour materializes, which it looks like, we can now confirm that in the month of November the BCCI is proposing this tour of West Indies, which would at least be of 2 test matches. If that does materialize, then Sachin would indeed play his 200 test match at home. What he does from there would be his decision, and that would be more interesting, how much of legs are left in Sachin Tendulkar, the cricketer, to take Indian test cricket forward.
Also, Vivek, considering that cricket is hugely popular in the subcontinent, doesn't it also make business sense to have Sachin play on home soil, so that stands are full, so that there's a lot of television broadcast and a lot of media frenzy generated around that?
I'm not exactly sure because when Sachin crossed his 10,000 runs or when he overtook Lara's record, Sachin unfortunately had to play in front of very empty stands. So Test cricket in India hasn't seen the best of audiences at certain sectors. Mohali has been worst. For that matter, Delhi has been slightly better. Of course, Bangalore and Chennai has been good centers, Mumbai being his home ground again. So that is one of the reasons why BCCI thought they would probably take test matches to lesser played centers like Hyderabad got very good response. Even in the test series against New Zealand. But yeah, from the perspective of the BCCI, it makes more business sense for the fact that the public would have, if they openly advertise this as Sachin's 200 test match, and a lot of people assume that he would be retiring, taking a call very soon. He's already going to play his last Champions League in this tournament, and then he's going to play the last test match is going to be. So yeah, from the business proposition, yeah, it makes a lot of sense where you want to felicitate Sachin for all his honor. You would want the sponsors to be lined up in a particular manner. They would want the best out of it at this particular occasion. So yeah, it makes a lot of business sense, and of course the timing as well. If you remember, if you play in India or you play in South Africa, it makes a lot of difference in terms of timings as well.
Yes.
So yeah, in a lot of sense, it makes sense for Sachin to be playing a test match if he decides to play his 200th and final test match in India.
Rasesh, what sense are you getting? What's the reason behind squeezing this test series against West Indies? Is it primarily that Sachin plays his 200 test on home soil, or were there other reasons attached with it?
There are two sides to the story. It would be false to say that BCCI has facilitated Tendulkar playing the home test match at home. That is not the only reason. The other factor is, of course, there's a finance part of it. A long South Africa tour was something that the people in the BCCI were always opposed to, because on an away tour, it's the host nation which will end up making a lot more money. The BCCI in its previous quarter, in its previous financial year, hasn't earned the sort of profit that you would have anticipated, and that was because there weren't enough home series. In the coming year, there aren't too many home series either. So that is one correction they wanted to make. Hence the decision of curtailing the South Africa tour, having a home series where West Indies would come in India. Of course, then the broadcast revenue comes in, the gate receipts comes in. So obviously finance is a big part of the whole decision-making process of getting West Indies to play in India and curtailing the South Africa tour as well.
And for all you know, the fact that Sachin's 200 tests would be on home soil, perhaps as GS Vivek was saying, test matches are not very well watched in India, but perhaps with that, we just might see the stands full.